Okay, and I'm going to share my screen. So Murray, if you can give me a thumbs up once you, or just let me know that you can see everything, that would be
Yes,
great.
absolutely.
You
Yep,
should
it's
be able
there.
to see it. Perfect.
Yep, yep.
Okay, let's get started here. So first of all, thank you very much for making the time to be here. It's an important topic, but we also understand that for leaders, for business owners, it's hard to take time away from their work. So really appreciate the hour that you've set aside, and hopefully, our desire is that at the end of this hour, you'll have gained some knowledge, have some more awareness of information security, why it's necessary, and what you need to do to protect your information and your business. So let's get started with this. First of all, just a little bit about Castlin. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. You can look us up on Google or any of your search engines. Our claim to fame is that we're a local prairie-based company. We're based out of Winnipeg. This is where we came to fruition, so to speak, and we provide end-to-end information security services, consultants, products, and we operate across Canada. So we go west, we go east as well. So we do have clients across the country. We are a member of Manitoba Chambers of Commerce, and that's primarily the reason why we're doing this presentation to you.
All right, so I'll give you a call Friday morning at 10.
Maria, I'm hearing some feedback.
Yes, I'm going. Yep.
Email, okay?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks for letting me join in, Stacy.
Okay, thanks for joining us, Tim, and
Yep.
we may pull you in again, all right?
Yep.
Okay, thanks everybody.
Great.
Have a good rest of your
Yeah,
day.
you
You
too.
too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so let's just keep going here. The industries that we deal with: government, federal law enforcement, crown corporations, telecom, IT, financial services, and so on as well. We also work with profitable and charitable organizations, as well as with professional associations like the Chamber, for example. So that's just a little bit about us.
No.
Excuse me. Hello.
Sorry, was there a question?
No, we have some. If everybody could mute, unless they have a question. If everybody could mute, that'd be great because we can hear you.
Perfect.
Thank
this
you.
slide, I'll fly right through. I won't spend too much time on it, but this just shows all the different security-related certifications that our team has. We're really proud of this because that tells clients we work with that we are constantly learning and constantly making sure that we're on the leading edge of information security awareness and knowledge as well. What's the agenda for today? We're going to talk about a few information security myths that are quite common that we run into all the time. We're just going to bust those. Take a look at some current trends. We're going to talk about some of the impacts of a data breach. We're going to talk about some of the threats to your information. What's a good framework for security? And then at the end, we'll have some best practices for your information security and have some time for a bit of Q&A as well. So there's a bunch of myths that we constantly run into. And the first one that we run into is that cybersecurity risks are not real. A lot of folks that we talk to still think that cybersecurity risks are stuff of the movies, like the war games and the net and all of these hackers and so on. They don't happen in real life. And even though there's been a lot more exposure now in the news and everything, they still think that they're not real. That they're going to happen to someone else, not them. So there's a myth around that. But the truth is that if you're doing business, if you're using computers, if you are on the internet, you are at risk. And the risks that are happening are real. They can take down businesses. They can really limit your ability to do what you need to do, which is to do business. So cybersecurity risks are real, and therefore they have to be treated as that. The second is that impacts of a breach or a ransomware attack are not significant. And again, that's a myth. These impacts can be so significant that from one of the statistics that we've seen repeatedly, nearly 3/4 of businesses, small, mid-sized businesses, will go out of business in 18 to 24 months after a breach, or have a severe reduction in their revenue. So these are significant impacts that happen when a business is breached or has a ransomware attack. Another myth: cybersecurity threats apply only to big businesses. And I think we get this myth because it's always the big companies that hit the news, right? It's the Indigos and the Sobeys and so on that hit the news, or Equifax and CRA and so on. And somehow we think that it only happens to big companies. But same thing that I just said, if you're using computers, if you're using technology, if you're on the internet, you're a threat. So threat actors are not looking specifically for the big companies. They're looking for whoever's the most vulnerable on the internet. So they can happen to any organization of any size, of any sector, in any geography. Another one: information security is only about information technology. Hear that from quite a few businesses, where they'll say, well, I have my IT guy, or I have my IT girl, or I have my IT company that does all the IT for us, and they're taking care of our security. But those are very different skill sets. So you may have a really good IT company or an IT staff, but they may not be fully versed in information security. So information security is not just about information technology. The other side of that also is that information security is about information, and not all of your information is in a technology. It's not on a computer. A lot of times there's filing cabinets with customer records and payment records and invoices and so on. So information security has to be a bit more holistic than just your IT assets. And then the last myth, or one of the other myths we see, especially in the last couple of years, is that my data is secure because I'm moving everything into the cloud. And that, again, is not true, because the cloud may not be secure. And there's two concepts around cloud security. One is the security of the cloud, which the cloud service provider is responsible for. But then the second concept is security in the cloud. So you, as the owner of your information, are still accountable for making sure that the information is secure in the cloud. So again, a myth that many folks have bought into, that if I move everything to the cloud, everything is going to be secure. And that's really not true. We're going to look at a few numbers just to kind of give you a sense of magnitude of this issue around cybersecurity or information security. So 2/3 of small to mid-sized businesses have suffered a cyber attack in the last 2 years, 2021, 2022. Nearly 2/3 of the businesses stated that they had been attacked by someone. There's a ransomware attack that happens every 11 seconds around the world. In 2019, when we started to look at these numbers, that was 14 seconds. But even in the 2 years since, through the pandemic, the frequency and the number of ransomware attacks has increased to the point where now it's gone down to 11 seconds. And I think that by the time we get to the end of 2023, that number could very well be under 10 seconds. And that just tells you how prevalent these attacks are and the increasing frequency of these attacks as well. Less than $500 is what a small business typically spends on their cybersecurity products. And typically what happens is, you look at your local electronics store flyer, and they have a router, and they go in, buy it because it's the $49.99 special or the $99.99 special. So you just buy it, but it's not commercial grade product. It doesn't have all the robustness or the security built into it that you need to protect your business. Or many times, you sign up with an internet provider, they give you a router, and that's what you use for all of your internet access, but it maybe is not the best solution for your business type of transactions and internet traffic. Just a few more here. The cost of a cybercrime toolkit that a hacker or a malicious actor can buy on the dark web is just around $1. It used to be around $15 around 2018, 2019 timeframe, but it's gone down to $1. So anyone can go on the dark web, they can buy a kit, point it to their neighbor's network or a business they don't like and launch an attack. So highly prevalent and highly accessible for the wrong reasons. $459 billion is what governments and corporations and companies around the world are planning to spend on cybersecurity by 2025 or through 2025. That's a huge number, and that number's been going up. It used to be around 350, then it went to 429, and this time it's around 459. But to give you a scale of the problem, the global economy related to cybercrime is around $10.5 trillion, which is mind-boggling. It's 30 times what we're planning to spend on securing ourselves that the criminals are going to make. So you can see the problem is huge. The payback is huge for cyber criminals. So it's very lucrative for them to carry on with this. Some current trends, again, I'm not going to go through all of this, but there's more stringent laws around security. GDPR, which is the European legislation, was the first one that put a bit more focus on information protection. Canada is in the process, has been in the process for updating our security regulations and so on. The US just released a White House strategy for information protection or cybersecurity. So the laws are becoming more and more stringent. And what that means is that if as a business, you have a breach, you have to report to the federal authorities that there was a breach. You have to report what the extent of that breach was. What did you do to do after that? Do you have sufficient controls in place now? So there's a lot more rigor from a government level to make companies accountable for protecting information. Data theft is turning into data manipulation. There is an increase in demand for security personnel. So as I showed you, there's $459 billion that need to be spent or that are planned for spending. And a lot of that is going to be around hiring, training, educating security personnel. So if you're looking for a career change, if there's somebody in your family who's looking for a career change, going into cybersecurity as a professional is going to be highly in demand and very, very lucrative career over the next little while. There's also a widespread adoption of Internet of Things. And this is basically anything that is connecting to the internet. Everything is connecting to the internet, right? Your garage door opener, your thermostat, your fridge, for Pete's sake, is now connecting to the internet. My wife and I were at a local store here a few weeks ago, and this fridge, the Samsung fridge, had a big screen on the front, and it was connected to the internet. And I was wondering why do we even need to have a fridge connecting to the internet? But that's the reality. And the problem with that is that everything that connects to the internet is a potential egress point for someone to come in, someone to hack into your home network and so on. And it's the same for businesses as well. And because of that, because of this widespread adoption of Internet of Things, consumer devices are now becoming bigger targets. So if you have, a coffee maker that connects to the internet in your office, it is now a potential device that can be hacked into to gain access to your network. The attackers are becoming smarter. They're well funded, especially nation-sponsored hackers. They have all the tools, they have amenities, they get benefit plans from their employers, and therefore they're becoming smarter and bolder, more commercial, and because of the advances in technology, in some cases they're becoming less and less traceable as well. Breaches are becoming more complex, harder to beat. It took Sobeys quite a long time, Indigo quite a long time to actually recover from the breaches that they had experienced, and that's concerning because these are big companies, and if they are finding it hard to beat these, what would happen to a small or a mid-size or a mid to large-size corporation even? And then the last point, this is a big trend that we're seeing. Probably we've been seeing it for the last couple of years. Cyber risk insurance is becoming more of a norm. So when most of our clients, especially in the last 12 to 18 months, when they've gone back to their insurance provider to renew their insurance, pretty much in 100% of the cases, the insurance provider has given them a cybersecurity form and said, fill this out to tell us how you are protected. And if you do, if we think you're protected enough, we will give you a discount on your premiums. But if not, then we will not. And the insurance companies are now pushing that issue. One of our clients, actually, this is a really good story, one we're quite proud of. Just this past week, there was a security conference in Winnipeg, and one of our clients came up to us and said, hey, I just went through my renewal, but all the work that we've been doing for the last 24, 36 months has resulted in zero upgrades, zero increase in our insurance premium. And actually their insurance provider said to them, this is very rare for us to see a company not have its premiums increased. In some cases, this insurance company has seen increases up to 90% for some of their customers. So if it hasn't hit you already, just a heads up that this is going to come very fast and very soon. What are some of the impacts of a data breach? And this is critical for us to understand. The cost of a data breach or recovery of a data breach is going out every year or going up every year. The numbers you see on your screen, the first row is the average cost per breached record. So in 2022, if you're a Canadian company, if you had a breach, you would have spent on average about $224 per breached record, not per breached customer, per breached record. So if you've got 10 customers, well, that means you're going to be spending $2,200. If you've got 100 customers, it's $22,000. So you can see within customer records, I should say. So you can see that with an escalating number of customer records, your cost to recover is just going up exponentially. The second row, the average cost to an organization for Canada, it was around 5.9 million in 2022. I take that number with a bit of a grain of salt because this would include the spend that Sobeys had, for example, the millions of dollars that they spent, or the millions of dollars that Indigo spent on their breach to recover from that. That would all become part of this average cost. But suffice it to say that it is a significant financial impact. And the reason it is that is because when a breach happens, you're not able to do business. So if you're, making widgets and selling widgets, well, you can't do that. Your operations come to a complete standstill. So you lose your revenue stream. You're not making any money. You're not selling anything and generating revenue. So that is one impact. But then the second impact that happens is that you're also spending money. You've got consultants or IT companies or security companies, preferably, coming in to figure out how the attack happened, recover your systems from that, and get you back to doing the business. But while you're doing this, the second bullet, you're actually bleeding money. So not only are you not making any money, but you're also dipping into your savings or whatever the case may be. You're bleeding money, for recovery. So financial impacts are huge. There's also some non-financial impacts. For example, litigation from affected customers. They're going to come after you if you don't protect their data. They will come after you. There's reputational damage as well. You have customers, supply chain partners, vendors who do not want to work with you because you've got a poor reputation for protecting their data. It's affecting your relationship. You've lost the trust in the marketplace. No one wants to do business with you. And because of that, potential customers who may have been wanting to come to you are now having second thoughts because they're not sure that you're going to be able to protect their data. If you have a product or service that's intellectual property and that gets exposed, you've lost your competitive advantage. Things that only you knew how to do are now out in the open and someone else can replicate those and so on. So lots of non-financial impacts as well. And of course, legal action for breaches and non-compliance, which could start with the government fining you for not protecting the data properly and not having reasonable controls in place. So what are some of the threats that you should be aware of? Well, there's two major types: internal threats, external threats. And in internal threats, there's insider threats, your employees. So somebody can actually pay somebody to become an employee in your organization, especially if you've got proprietary knowledge or intellectual property. That could be it. So this is a professional who comes in, earns your trust, and has access to safe and secure information. Or it could be malicious. Somebody did not get their vacation week that they wanted, or did not get the right level of a raise or bonus or something, and now they're just angry and want to hurt the company, and they can do something. Or they're negligent. They were given the training, but they don't know. They've forgotten how to process data, how to take care of information. So they're just negligent. And the third one, the last one, is compromised. Someone is in some kind of a compromising position, and this person holds them, in some kind of a vice. And what they're doing is they're asking them to share information that should not be shared outside. So you can have employees in any of those categories as far as a threat is concerned. There's also a threat around mistakes and sloppy process. How do you process credit card information, for example, and you didn't train the employees properly, so they don't really know how to capture data, how to process it, how to get rid of it, and so on. File loss, data loss, equipment loss, those are all internal threats. Leaks, conflicts of interest could be another one. Favors, loose lips, storytelling. When we're sitting on a weekend, for example, having a beer around a fire pit, and we're telling stories about our company, we have to be super careful and train our employees to know what information they're able to share and what information they should not be sharing. So things like that are all internal threats. And then there's external threats. And this is the stuff that, that gets into movies, that movies are made of: hacking and malware and ransomware. And email is the number one vector for any of those, for ransomware and malware especially, or phishing, for example. Email, clicking on the wrong link, and so on. All that is external threat, because now what you're doing is you're giving access to an external party who's not supposed to have access. You're giving them access to your internal systems through any of these. Password attacks. So, if you're a Marvel fan and you love Tony Stark, somebody knows that about you on social media, or they know you, and they're just going to try Tony Stark rules, Tony Stark lives, whatever the case may be. They're just trying to hack into your password based on what they know about you. Denial of service attacks basically brings down your websites or anything that faces the internet, so no one can do business with you. So all of these things are external threats. Man in the middle is one that I want to talk about, and that's when, for instance, you go to a coffee shop and they have a free Wi-Fi network, open Wi-Fi network. You connect your laptop, and the connection that you have now to their Wi-Fi is wide open. Anyone can insert themselves into that connection and actually watch all of your traffic that's going up and down. They can find out which bank you work with. They can find out what your credentials are that you that you're using to log into the bank. So just a quick piece of advice: use a VPN, which is a virtual private network, and that will, before you connect to any network like that, make sure you fire up your VPN. It encrypts your connection and allows you to have a safe connection to the internet. Hardware theft at the bottom is another key external threat. If you're traveling, don't leave your laptop or any of your technology in the backseat of the car. Throw it in the trunk, and so on, so it's out of sight and it's not a tempting target for threats that are external to your organization. A few recent examples that we've observed, that we've seen. Western Digital, it's a huge company that makes hard drives. They had a breach a little while ago, but that's one example. It's a international company and so on, but they had a breach, and their cloud services were down. Their cloud backup services were down. I think we're all familiar with the Sobeys breach that happened in the fall, then Indigo earlier this year as well. Those are Canadians. Nordic Spa, which owns Thermea in Winnipeg, had a breach as well just a few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago now. Saint Amant is a care facility here in Winnipeg. They had a data breach, and it took them a long time to recover from that to get everything up and running. They were able to get their care systems up right away, which was great, but they had no connection out to the internet because they still needed quite a long time to recover from that. And typically, when we see these, we think of hackers sitting in their mom's basement or something like that, or a worst case scenario, they are a malicious nation state and they're attacking. But I was shocked to read this news that there's a man in Brandon, right in the backyard, who was launching thousands of cyber attacks against North American companies. He just wanted to do it. 21-year-old young man who decided that he wanted to do that and had been doing that for a number of years, but now he's been arrested and put away. So it's not something that happens outside North America, outside Canada. It's happening right in our backyard as well. What's a framework for information security? I think this is highly valuable for owners, for business leaders to understand that your framework for information security should be a triangle. There should be 3 elements to that. And the first element is process. So this is a governance part. You have to have good processes and procedures and policies in place to make sure that your information security mindset is covered in those. You should also have good technologies, not the Boxing Day special from your local electronic company, but commercial grade products that can protect your information. And a lot of times we get a pushback on that, because when I say commercial grade, a lot of people think that it's going to be super expensive. It's going to be tens of thousands of dollars for this. But over the last 5 to 10 years, the products have improved immensely, and the prices have come down immensely as well. So it may not be as big of a stretch as one might think. And then the last piece is people, your staff, yourself. That has to be part of the equation when you're thinking about a framework for information security. And if I can just wrap it up with one comment, you may have the best procedures, policies, practices in place. You may have the most expensive tools and technologies and products in place. But if you haven't invested in your staff, in your employees, in their training, in their awareness, everything else is going to fall flat. So make sure that you're making sure that they're getting the training that they need to be able to protect your organization's information assets. So that's kind of a mindset that one needs to have around information security as an organization. What are some of the best practices for information security? Well, there's a few things that you should keep in mind. I think we have about 14 or 16 bullet points here. First of all, have a formal information security policy and procedures. And these could include a technology use agreement, a non-disclosure agreement, a non-compete agreement with your employees. For example, if your employees come into work and you issue them a laptop, or they have access to a computer, there has to be a boundary in terms of what they can use and how they can use it. Because if they're surfing the internet and they download something that affects your company's future, they need to be aware what your expectation is. And those expectations are typically set in a technology use agreement, for example. So it's vital to have something like that in place when you onboard them on an annual basis, making sure that there's a sign up and so on that happens. And many times what we've seen is that a lot of these policies and technology use agreements, for example, act as a deterrent for an employee to be minding their behavior when they're using company assets. So just to think about that. So key number 1, have a formal information security policy in place. You should also know what all your information assets are. Where do you keep all your information? Computers, laptops, filing cabinets, and so on, USB drives, storage devices that you have. Those are all the ones that a lot of the business owners, a lot of business leaders know about, but without fail, every single time, we have to remind them about printers and fax machines, because probably for the last 15-20 years, all of these devices, these multifunction printers or printers and fax machines and so on, they have a hard drive. So when you're faxing something or when you're sending something to print, that hard drive contains an image of that document. So when that device comes to the end of its life and you decide to discard it, the hard drive that goes out with that device still has every single thing that was either printed, if it's a fax machine, that was sent out or received. So, you have to know where all your information assets are. Software as well. Are you keeping data in spreadsheets or forms or financial systems? You have to have a really good understanding and handle on your information assets. You also should have a classification of the data that you collect. What type of data are you taking in from your customers, from your suppliers, from your business partners, from your employees, especially from your employees, because you'll have their payroll information, you'll have their social insurance numbers. Maybe if it's an HR system, you may even have their health information in there. So you need to understand that what type of assets contain information and what type of information do you collect and store and destroy. There has to be a mindset around destruction of that data as well, according to the government policies that dictate your business, for example. And the other reason you want to know the classification of these data is because not all data, not all information is the same. You need to have different types of handling and destruction procedures depending on the type of data that you're talking about. What else you need to do? You need to identify financial data. Are you taking credit card information? Are you storing credit card information? And what are you doing with it after you've processed that? Banking information from customers or employees, payroll information, and so on. You have to know all of those financial pieces as well. What else do you need? You need to conduct a regular security training for employees. We were working with a client and I was talking to their IT staff, and I asked them when the last time was that they were that they had gone to a conference or some training, and it was 4 years ago. And in IT or in security, you cannot have that big of a lapse from learning about what's going on out there. So please be mindful and make sure that your employees are getting regular training around security procedures and so on. Conduct internal audits and vulnerability assessments on a regular basis. It is, if you don't know where the vulnerabilities are, if you don't conduct an audit which tells you where the gaps are, you're not going to be able to do anything because you'll be completely blind to the vulnerabilities and the gaps that exist within your company. So you have to do these on a regular basis. This is not a one and done. It should be a part of your regular annual assessment to make sure that you're doing a gap assessment, audits, and vulnerability assessments. The number 7 here, conduct regular penetration testing for critical systems. This is where a security expert, like one of our staff, for example, will actually try to break into your systems. And there's different types of break-ins that we can try and so on. But the intent is to figure out where the vulnerabilities are. And once that vulnerability has been exploited, how far the hacker can go into the system. And of course, anytime we're working with a client, we always make sure that the systems don't come down. That's critical, unless the systems are in absolutely terrible shape and you can't help it. But again, these are vital tests that you need to do, especially if you get a website, for example, that has a form or something like that on it. You want to make sure that You're conducting regular penetration testing on systems like that, and even internal systems, your financial systems, your manufacturing systems, to see if they can be hacked in and compromised in some way. Invest in updating your technology assets as well as physical assets. So, get rid of the consumer grade stuff, because you're a business, you're a commercial business that needs to have proper commercial security around it. And not just on the technology side, but also on the physical side. So if you've got filing cabinets with customer records or any kind of records that need to be protected, making sure that the door to that room is a strong door. It's a security door. Only certain people have access to it. Only certain people have keys to it, that it's locked when it's not being accessed, and so on. So things like that are, again, very vital for you to implement in your organization. What else? Establish and enforce a proper password management policy. Can't stress this enough. Making sure that your systems are capable of handling long passwords or passphrases, and making sure that everyone is aware and everyone is has to comply with this policy to make sure that their passwords are secure and safe. Formal processes when you bring in new employees, credit checks if they're going to be handling money, police background checks, and so on. All of those reference checks are absolutely vital to conduct, and so on. And now, one of the things that we don't typically recommend, but many companies still are doing this, is that they'll go through an employee's LinkedIn profile, or try to go through their Facebook profile and see where this person stands, in their normal personal life. For me personally, it's kind of in the gray area. I think if you want to discover something about a client, it should happen or a potential employee, it should happen in the interview process, but there are companies and employers that are doing that as well. And then also, on the flip side of 10, also establish formal processes when employees leave the company. So there should be a proper exit process as well. Take all of their assets back, laptops, computers, if they have a key if they own a truck, or if you gave them a vehicle, all of those should be retrieved before the employee leaves. And also making sure that they are removed from all of your systems. And this could simply be just going in and changing their password, so they cannot access their systems at all from outside the company once they are no longer employed by the company. Establish a business continuity plan and also a disaster recovery plan. And once you've done that, test it. And what this includes is just looking at every possible scenario of what could happen that would stop me from doing business. This doesn't have to be strictly a ransomware or a breach type of an event. It could be a flood. A flood happens, and there's water everywhere in your office or in your manufacturing plant. What do I do next? How do I ensure that business can continue? How do I ensure that I'm recovering from this disaster? And then testing out those plans to make sure that what you're actually documenting, what you've got on paper, is actually a valid strategy and is viable as well. So super important to have that in place as well. As a leader, create and support a culture of information security. Your staff, your employees, they're looking up to you. And if you're not changing your password properly, if you're not practicing good security procedures, they're going to learn from you, from what you do, not from what you're saying, right? So make sure that you create a culture that focuses on information security. Establish policies and practices for the non-IT records. We talked about this already in terms of filing cabinets and how do you handle those, or the post-it notes that are attached to the side of your monitor. How are those handled and destroyed eventually? And finally, understand the damage to your organization. You have to have a good understanding of what will happen to your company if there's a data breach, if there's a security incident. What are the financial impacts of that? What are the non-financial impacts of that? You have to have a good understanding of that, because without that, you really cannot put a plan in place to protect yourself and your organization. So those are some of the best practices. What can you do? There's a few things that you can start with right away. Educate yourself and your staff. Highly critical, highly important, making sure that you are educating yourself. And there's, there's good companies or good education providers here in Winnipeg, for example, like Red River College, for instance, or MITT is a good institution as well that can provide some of those focused, targeted education for your staff through their programs. Also recognize that you may have an IT team or an IT service provider, but they might need external help when it comes to security. So don't rely 100% on your IT team or your IT service provider. They might need some extra help as well. Remembering that as a leader, as an owner, you are still responsible for everything that happens to your data, and that includes security of your data in the cloud. Change the organization's culture. We just talked about that. Understand the value of the data that you collect. If you're collecting someone's social insurance number and credit card number and bank information number, you're a steward of that data. You have to protect that data, because if that data gets breached, it could mean that that person now has their identity stolen, and it happened in your hands. So you have to understand the value of the customer data, client data, employee data that you're collecting, and then develop a plan to take incremental steps. When you do a first round of assessments, you don't have to do everything. You don't have to go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds or 3 months, but develop a plan to take incremental steps. Start with protecting your perimeter. Create a plan that fits your budget, that fits your operations, that fits your capacity, but develop a plan and then follow the plan. Determine a possible areas of vulnerability and security gaps. Again, like I said, if you don't know where you're vulnerable, you're not going to be able to put a plan in place to protect yourself. And then establish targets for improving the overall security of your organization. So if you're at, let's say a score of 10 today, figure out how you get to 11 in the next 6 months, how you get to 12 at the end of the year, and so on and so forth. So have some goals, have some milestones established to show an overall improvement in your security. But most importantly, just don't be overwhelmed. This is a topic that can overwhelm us, but don't be overwhelmed. Just start somewhere, because you just have to start, because anything that you do today is going to make you better than you were yesterday. So just start with something. How can we help? How can Castellan help? We have a whole slew of services that we can provide, but maybe I'll just highlight a couple. I think I talked about vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. So we can obviously do that. If you have security assets, critical assets, we can scan those assets for you, give you a report of what the vulnerabilities are that we've discovered, and even give you a plan for remediation. And then you can take that to your team and they can do that for you. Also, if you have, again, business critical assets, we can test, we can do a penetration test on those to see how far a hacker would be able to go once they've exploited that vulnerability. So we can help you with that as well. And the last one, which is top right corner there, our Security Operations Center. So this is a service which up to this point, I think, has been the domain of large companies and so on. But we've established a Security Operations Center where we work with the client, we identify their assets, their IT systems, for example, that need to be monitored, and we provide 24/7 monitoring of their assets. Essentially, our experts are looking at security logs that are coming into our systems, and they're looking for anomalies. They're looking for patterns that are not consistent, or patterns that look malicious, and so on. And if they detect something, they right away, get in touch with the customer, or if in case of some customers, actually do the remediation for them and stop the attack from continuing on. So we do that, and also the agents that we install on the machines, they're constantly scanning the system as well to make sure that nothing is getting past us. And the last one, bottom right corner, integrated information security assessment. This is where this is the mothership or the flagship of our services, where we look at every single aspect of the business, manufacturing, governance, policies, non-IT systems, HR, and figure out where organizational gaps are when it comes to security. And we provide some a list of all the gaps, and then also provide remediations and a plan of action in terms of what you can implement in the next 6 months, next 12 months, and so on and so forth. So those are some of our services. We have a couple of offers for members of the chamber that are part of Morden Chamber of Commerce. I'll share that with you quickly. First one, as I mentioned, is around our security operations center. So for the chamber, what we're offering is up to 10 systems that we can monitor for 90 days free of charge. The setup is very fast and very simple. There's absolutely no commitment after the 90 days. You know, if you don't like what we did or the value of the monitoring, you know, we can shake hands and go our own way. But we believe that this is a valuable service because it takes a lot of pressure off you because your systems are being monitored on a 24/7 basis. But that's one of our offers. 3 months, 90 days of free monitoring for up to 10 systems in your organization that we can do that. And then the second one is a slightly similar but maybe different offer, and that's to do a free security assessment. We will come in. It's kind of a subset of our big, large integrated information security assessment. It's kind of a subset of that. We'll come in, we'll look at some of the technical controls, technical systems around your policies, procedures, and so on, do an assessment and give you a report. And again, there's no expectation of an ongoing commitment. Once the assessment is done, we give you the report, and hopefully you see value in that as well and ask you to continue to work with you. But if not, that's fine as well. But those are the two offers that we've got for the chamber today. You can reach out to Murray or myself, and we can definitely help start that conversation. This is how you can contact us. You can find us on the internet. You can send us an email at info@Castlin, or you can check us out on LinkedIn. There's some articles and stuff on our website as well that are quite helpful if you just want to go and browse as well. So in conclusion, just to wrap up this presentation, and hopefully we have a few minutes still, information security applies to all organizations. It doesn't matter that you're in Morden or Flin Flon or Nepal or Winnipeg or New York or Toronto. It applies to all organizations in all sectors of all sizes. So it is an important issue that businesses and leaders need to be aware of. Good security is a combination of governance and physical and cybersecurity. You have to have a very holistic view of security. It's not just about buying a technology tool and thinking that everything will be okay. It's a combination. This is our mantra at our company. Prevention is better than remediation. $1 spent in prevention is way better than the $10 or $15 or $30 that you're going to spend on remediation. So think prevention when you're thinking security. Cultural change starts at the top. If you're in a leadership role, it's up to you to make sure that your organization is following proper security procedures, and you're the one leading the cultural change around that. And the one last question that I want to leave with you and wrap up this with: can you, as a leader, can you assure your customers, your employees, anybody that you work with, can you assure them that you are doing everything that you can to protect their sensitive information? Because they have entrusted you with that. And maybe that's the one question that you can take back to your own organizations. think about it if you're at the top of the organization, or think about it with the other leaders in the organization, and really determine what your answer is to that. That brings us to the end where, end of the presentation, where I stop talking and we can ask questions. We're here for a few more minutes, and hopefully we can address anything that may have popped up for you.
Azar, that was a wonderful presentation. We didn't have any questions come in on chat.
Okay.
So if there's anybody that's attending today that has a question they'd like to ask, now would be a good time. Now would be the right time. Azar, I have a question.
Okay.
You mentioned USB drives.
Right.
Would they be a source? Would they be a vulnerable opening to to a threat?
Yes. Yeah.
They're very common.
They are very common, and they are the most lost object of all of the IT assets. So Brent is not here, but when he travels, one of his hobbies is, when he parks his car, one of his hobbies is to just kind of scan the ground. And I think pretty much in every single trip, he finds at least one USB drive that has fallen out somewhere, that's just lying on the parking lot. And he doesn't plug them into his laptop to figure out what's on it. But that just tells you the issue. And most of the USB drives, here's the other thing, most of the USB drives, that we buy at Best Buy or Staples or Walmart, for example, or any store, they're not encrypted. They are just regular drives. So whatever data you've stored on them, as soon as you plug them into a computer, is accessible. So the easiest way to go about it is to buy encrypted USB drives. If you have to transfer data using one of those, make sure that it's an encrypted USB drive. And the price is not prohibitive between a regular USB drive versus an encrypted. And I guess the other thing that you have to consider is what's the cost of the data that you may lose, that may become accessible to someone else if it's stored on an unencrypted USB drive versus an encrypted USB drive.
Thank you, Azar.
Okay. No problem.
I think we have time for one more question. Is anybody? I'll take the opportunity, Azar.
Okay.
Everybody talks about the cloud. And you've made it very clear that just because a business's data is stored in the cloud, that it is not safe.
Right.
I guess it's a two-point question. Why is it not safe? And could you describe what the cloud is, what it looks like? What is a cloud? Yeah,
so a cloud is a combination of storage units, storage devices. So for instance, the Google Cloud or Amazon or Microsoft Cloud, those are all big data centers. So Microsoft has one in Toronto, Google has one in Toronto. They have a couple across the country, for Canada as well. It's basically a big data center that has lots and lots and lots of storage space. Now that's a very simplified view of it. There's obviously the option of spinning up virtual servers, running your applications in those clouds and so on as well. But one way to look at it is it's just a combination of lots and lots of computers that are all interlinked and that can be connected from your desktop, from your local machines or your phones or whatever the case may be. So that's what a cloud is. They're not safe because, like I mentioned earlier, there are two elements to protection. One is the security of the cloud, and the other is the security in the cloud. So the cloud service provider is responsible for making that they have all the controls in place to protect the cloud. So they may have authentication in place, they may have encryption in place, and they may have dedicated IP addresses, for example, and so on. But they are responsible for making sure that their infrastructure, their cloud, is secure. What makes it not so secure, first of all, is that the cloud service provider may not have implemented all the controls to the extent that they should be in place. So there could be a lapse, there could be vulnerabilities, there could be gaps in the security of the cloud. The second reason we say that it's not as secure as we think it is because there's the idea of the security in the cloud. And what that means is if you don't have proper access controls set up, for instance, if I can access my company's cloud through my phone and I lose my phone, but I don't have proper controls on my phone, anyone who finds that phone now has access to the data in the cloud. So again, not proper controls in place, not enough checks and balances in place to protect access to the cloud, to the data in the cloud, can also mean that your data may be open for compromise. So that's the reason why we say that that there's this misnomer or myth that if I put everything in the cloud, it's safe and secure, and that's not true. You still have to have controls in place to protect your access to the cloud.
Thank you, Raza. Are there any more questions today? Well, I think we'll wrap it up. We've hit an hour right on the button. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And as I just mentioned in our message there, our chat message, that we really hope that you receive some value for the time you've given up today. We're very appreciative of your attention.
Same here. Thank you so much for your attention. Really appreciate that.
Have a good day, everybody.